that program generated over 300 individual procurements to spend $2.6 billion or thereabouts. And that is why it has taken the time it has taken. You can't add enough people to process 300 procurements in any, right? What we're going to have to do, and I'm speaking here as Minister of Finance and Public Service responsible for the procurement process. You can't expect to have 300 procurements and get anything done in anything less than 24 to 36 months. What we're going to have to do is that program is going to have to be consolidated, and it is, and that has its own challenges. But as a parliament responding to the people's business, we are going to have to prioritize efficiency, right? Prioritize efficiency.
All right, I want to switch focus. The central bank projects that inflation is going to remain out of the upper band, probably for the next 12 months or so, which means that interest rates will remain elevated. Your interest payments have exceeded your projections based on that. Given the fact that we may have another year of high interest rates, what impact or what contingency do you have to manage the higher than projected interest payments?
Well, so the good news, member, is that, and here you're talking about the domestic environment where the policy rate is forecasted to remain at current levels because inflation continues to be elevated or above the target range. The good news is that 70% of the domestic debt is fixed. So the sensitivity of our interest costs to the policy rate is, I'm being corrected by the FS here, 80% of our domestic debt is fixed. And that's a very good thing for the government in that the sensitivity to the policy rate is reduced. Now, just that 20% variation, obviously can result in upward movements, but those are unlikely to be significant enough to pose a problem, to pose a challenge. We had movements in interest costs in this fiscal year, which we've been able to accommodate and deal with.
The external debt will also be impacted because central banks globally are also being conservative in terms of holding their interest rates. Again, what exposure is, how exposed are we on the external debt to variable movements in interest rates?
Right. So on the external debt, we mostly have, as far as the market debt is concerned, which is the majority of the external debt portfolio, those are fixed coupons. So we pay the same amount. The amount we pay, unfortunately, in our case, is fixed from the day the debt was taken on. So in our case, those debts were taken on 10 years ago, 20 years ago, at much higher coupons than we could get today. But so just to respond to your question, those would not be affected by the policy rate environment. We do have one or two floating rate debt that are mostly multilateral based, where it's linked to a floating rate, and those would experience an upward tick, but an upward tick from a small base because the multilateral base amount is small. But they have a variable component that can vary with interest rates. But I wouldn't, the interest sensitivity there at this point is not something to be, unduly concerned about.
The fiscal policy paper mentions the launch of a second catastrophe bond. Can you indicate the plans for that, when you plan to do that, and the amount that you intend to issue for that bond?
Yeah, so Jamaica is, as we know, very exposed to potential natural disasters, including hurricanes, tropical cyclones, excess rain, and so on. And those events can have a deleterious impact on Jamaica's fiscal trajectory. As such, given where we are in that trajectory, in order to give us the opportunity to bounce back quickly, that is the central lesson, I believe, from one of the central lessons from our economic history, that we can't avoid economic shocks. Most of them are outside of our control. They're global in their sources, and natural disasters are clearly outside of our control. But what we aim to do is to be in a position where we can bounce back and bounce back quickly. And hence, we need to be in a position where fiscal resources become available in the event of a major natural disaster shock. We became the first small country in the world to independently sponsor a catastrophe bond, which covers us for 3 hurricane seasons, 2021, 2022, and 2023. And we intend on, and it's expired, those 3 seasons. We intend to renew or to enter into a new catastrophe bond that will cover us for 4 hurricane seasons, 2024, 2025, 2026, and 2027. And I dare say that is something that we should do just continually, just to make sure that we are not set back by such an occurrence. It can happen. It would lead to a diminution in output in that particular year, but with resources coming in, we'd have the opportunity to bounce right back.
The fiscal and primary balances for the April to December 2023 were lower than the targets that were set in the third supplementary. Can you explain what the causes of those shortfalls are and what strategies are in place to mitigate against such occurrences in the future?
Thank you for that question, because I hope that through all of our debates and everything, we will absolutely agree that meeting our fiscal targets is important. It is something that Jamaica has done for the last 10 years. This year would be 11. It would be 3 years under the prior administration, and if we meet it this year, it would be 8 years under our administration. Before this current year of this 11 years, that was not the case. We just set a fiscal target and, it wouldn't be met, so what? And that led us to problems. So I'm happy for that kind of question, because it's important. So yes, as at December, we were off of that target, right? And you see, as a result of that, the December revenues came in quite a bit below the targets implied by the third supplementary estimates, and that would have been the primary reason. If you look at that table, the April to December revenues were down by $9 billion, 640 billion versus 649 billion, and all of that 9 billion came in December. It was a very sort of unusual occurrence that was a little, you can imagine, very unsettling. And that resulted in the target for April to December for the fiscal balance and the primary balance being not met by a small amount. The good news is that in January, we had a reversal, in that in January, the revenues were approximately 8 billion over the third supplementary estimate. So something was happening, certainly with our major payers, some timing difference. We do know that 1 or 2 government entities were late, but that does not count for the 9 billion. But it was a welcome relief when January numbers came in, and they came in 8 billion ahead of what was implied in the third supplementary estimate. So at the end of January, we'd be back on track. We have to watch February and March very closely, because I know that we're all agreed in this house that the fiscal targets that are essentially approved by Parliament are sacrosanct and must be met.
Shifting a little from the macro picture to a particular project, can you state whether the government has satisfied all the requirements on its end to have the harmonization project started and implemented? And could you also speak to, I don't know if I have the right term, is it enterprise resource? You have put out a bid for other casinos and hotel developments. Can you speak to that as well?
Thank you. So, with respect to the Harmony Cove project, we are at the most optimistic point that I have seen since 2016 with respect to the readiness of our partners, in that they have made the representation to us in no uncertain terms that they have the resources to undertake their end of the joint venture agreement. And not only have they represented it, they have gone beyond that to show us evidence in their form. What remains outstanding on our side is to finalize the restating of the joint venture agreement. Time has passed, and it has to be restated to reflect current realities while honoring principles. And we have to perfect the integrated resort development license for the territory that we have agreed with them. They have an integrated resort license, but we have to approve it for the territory that we have agreed and for a time period that now begins on the restating, on the date of restatement of the joint venture agreement. And then the most important thing that remains outstanding is to honor the principles behind the tax incentives that were granted to this project at its inception, and not only granted at its inception, but sort of reinforced by actions and letters thereafter. We have to honor that, but honor it in an environment that is completely different to the environment in which those incentives were given. In today's Jamaica, there's no project that would, get those kind of incentives, right? So, so we are in the process of finalizing that aspect of it on the incentives. And I hope I know you have been very consistent in asking questions about it, questions that are supportive, essentially. I hope that when we come with a finalization and we remind what those incentives are and what they mean and so forth, we'll have the support of the whole House, that what we're simply doing is honoring commitments made by prior administrations, by prior prime ministers, by prior finance ministers, in the interest of Jamaica, in bringing to Jamaica a project that will be very different in size, in scope. It'll be game changing. It will open a new chapter in Jamaica's tourism product. So we are working towards being in a position where we can finalize those tax incentives in the month by April. That's what I want to achieve. And once we restate the joint venture agreement, obviously that timeline depends on the responsiveness of our counterparty and us getting to a point that we are agreeable to. Clearly, I mean, we're not going to just that needs to be understood. But I'm being transparent about my goals. Once we sign off on a joint venture agreement, then clearly the project is going to have to go and get approvals, local permits, building permits, and so on. And that's outside of the domain of the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service.
What about the other licenses?
Okay, on the other licenses, we had integrated resort development call for proposals. We received 2 bids. One of those bids has progressed all the way to a license being awarded, and that is for the Princess Hotel in Hanover, where that development meets all the criteria in terms of the size of the development, the size of the investment, $500 million or more, over 1,000 rooms, with 500 of those rooms being luxury rooms. And it's quite exciting. This is the first and will be the first, notwithstanding the fact that we've had this law in the books for the past 12 years, this will be the first integrated resort development in Jamaica. And that license has been awarded, and the building is near completion. And it's very exciting, I must say. This is because of the IRD, part of it is in the finance ministry's domain. But I must say, the enthusiasm that you saw from our Minister of Tourism, I absolutely share with respect
So it is
to
wearing off
this
on you.
project. Huh?
It is wearing off on you.
No, man, the IRD project is a game-changing project. Game-changing. And it will be the first IRD in Jamaica. Now, we have a second application that is working its way through the process. There are matters that are outstanding, and once those matters are provided, we'll be able to move forward. But we have one definitely on the ground and up and coming. We have the Harmony Cove, which will be the second one. And then if this application is successful, it will be the third integrated resort development project.
All right, I'll pause. I know my colleagues have other questions.
Member Hilton,
Yeah,
and then Member Phillips. That's it.
Minister, I want to continue in the vein of the fiscal risks. Could you say what is the state of remittances over the last period?
I don't have that figure with me here, but I did hear the governor say that remittances continued to go up after COVID. But I believe in the last 12 months there was a slight reduction, single-digit percentage. But I don't have the figures with me here.
I'm hearing 500 million. Is that correct?
Well, I don't have that figure, member, but I can get it for you.
Yeah,
the thing to focus on, though, at the end of the day, is what the balance is at the end of the day. And for the first time in 30 years or more, Jamaica ran a current account surplus of I think it was a couple percentage points of GDP, which means after taking into account the deficit on goods, after taking into account the inflows from tourism and remittances and our imports,
Minister,
we have a net positive balance in our foreign exchange.
Minister, I'm asking the question, though. I'm asking the question about the fiscal risks. And so the point to be made is that there has been a downturn somewhat. We don't know the numbers. I'm asking for the numbers. But the other point I wish to make is that you point to climate change and the climate risks. I have to, well, you know my overriding concern that I have about what is happening in the Sandy Gully and what is happening at Marcus Garvey Drive that threatens not just the fiscal budget, but threatens the commerce to and from the port and the main artery for commercial activity in the country. And I've been asking Minister, what is the specific plan to address the Sandy Gully issue and Marcus Garvey and the port, including Tinsipen? That's a very, very critical area of commercial activity, and I see no plans, nowhere, to address those issues.
I think that's a question that's best posed to another minister. That's not, we speak, informally, and I share your concern on the Sandy Gully because I share the Sandy Gully with you in terms of it comes through my constituency.
The top part, the clean part. Yeah.
And it's something we're committed to address. I hope when we address it, we have your support. It's something that we're committed to address.
And the more time, it's a timely issue, Minister, because it's not just a fiscal that is at risk. Lives are at risk.
Yes.
Lives and
Yes.
property
Yes.
are at risk.
Yeah, and you have been consistent in that representation.
Yes,
And I share the gully with you, so to speak. So I definitely am sensitive to that concern.
the Port of Kingston and Pennsylvania, as well as Marcus Garvey.
Yes, we're working on a project with the
Yeah.
World Bank
Yeah.
to introduce a concept of a business improvement district that will provide a legislative framework for the government to involve the private sector in the maintenance of an area. The private sector in that area have expressed to the government their desire and willingness to invest in that area and maintain it at a standard that they believe is consistent with what they need to do business. We just need to put the legislative framework in place to allow them to do that. And business improvement district, which is a concept that has been successfully implemented in other countries, is one that we are going to make a reality here.
You can't come too soon, Minister. Finally, you mentioned the large scale industries. Where is that legislation, along with the customs legislation, that I believe are critical to underpinning the sustainability of the
Yeah, good questions. By the way, I said earlier the 500 million for IRDs. The number is actually 450. It was 5. We reduced it to 450. With respect to the legislation on customs, as you know, that legislation went through the Joint Select Committee, and the bill was tabled in Parliament. I am ready to go, and I know you are as well.
Yeah.
But the customs agency has needed some time to get some prerequisites in place before the law can be passed. I'll speak, and that's a little bit frustrating to me. I know it is to you as well. But we're not in a position to debate or implement the bill until those things are resolved. I believe that we are at that position now, and I'm hoping that we can open debate on the customs bill in April. With respect to the large scale bill, that too is in its final stages. There were some comments that the tax administration Jamaica had on the last draft, and it went back to the CPC. You know, like other pieces of legislation that other ministers have charge over, you know, it is frustrating when the legislation cannot proceed at the pace that a minister would like. And one of the hallmarks that develop through this type of public service is patience. That you know, so I'm hopeful that I will be in a position to take that legislation to Parliament very soon.
Thank you. Minister, I know the issue of inflation is under the purview of the Bank of Jamaica. But in October of 2023, the transport sector was given a 35% increase, 19% tranche in October, and a 16% is due April of 2024. And seeing that you had, despite the information that you got from the Bank of Jamaica, reduce the fare box of the JUTC, and seeing that you're trying to contain inflation, can you say if this 16% that is due of April 2024 to the bulk of the operators will be given to the public transport sector?
Remember, you will understand that is not a matter that I can speak to as an individual. I mean, those are cabinet decisions. We do know what has been announced, but I can't speak to that.
Well, all right. I'll await then. No problem.
Next, Member Phillips.
Paulwell.
Member Paul.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a few questions, Minister. I want to just be clear on some of the assumptions behind the budget. And just for the record, I want to know, for example, at what price the barrel of oil is projected to be for the remainder of the ensuing year. Price of oil, yes. Just and if you could also remind us, as you're at it, the growth projection.
I think your colleague spoke to the growth projection.
Right.
I believe the growth projection is it's 1.8%. With respect to the oil projection, that is on the first page of the fiscal policy paper. It's on multiple pages actually.
Yeah.
On page.
I just expect, Minister, that it will be at the top
Part
of
2,
your
page 12.
head.
Yeah. So no, I want people to be able to
wouldn't have
follow
to-
because they can access the document online.
Yeah.
So I'm saying to them, they can find information themselves on page 12, part 2, but it's in multiple parts of the document. And you could have found it there too.
Yes.
The oil price projection, and let us discuss what I mean. It's 72.4. Sorry, for 24-25, 77.4.
So, Minister, I recall last year we had a higher projection for oil than was the assumption. Could you say how much?
You mean a higher outturn than the assumption? What do you say?
No. Right. Could you say what money value that amounted to?
No, I wouldn't be able to say what money value that amounted to.
All right, Minister, in relation to revenues, I'm seeing that you're projecting an increase of revenues, taxes, etc., of $100 billion for the new financial year. That is quite a hefty increase and no doubt has implications. Would you be in a position today to indicate in precise terms where these additional revenues will emanate?
Well,
Knowing your penchant for no taxes, no new taxes.
Yeah, for those who are watching online or listening, first of all,
Nigel attack to that looks good.
Projections are showing a growth in revenues of from $947 billion to $1,033 billion. That is an increase of 86 billion, or just around 8% or thereabouts, or close to 9%. If you look at the growth of revenues over the past few years, if you take out the COVID year, I mean, you would see that, that has been, revenues have grown by amounts that are within that range, and that relates to the growth in the economy. Certainly in the past, this has been without putting any additional strain on any individual in terms of introduction of any new taxes. But if we have more people for example, coming to Jamaica than the year before, then we have more departure tax revenues than we had before. If we have people who are importing uh, more items than before, then we'll have more revenues. I mean, there are 200,000 more cars that were licensed, not this fiscal year, last fiscal year, as compared to 2016. When you have more cars on the road, it means you have more revenue. When you have more people employed, it means there's more revenue. When you have more buildings going up, there's more revenue. When more highways are being built, there's more revenue. When there's more economic activity, the government doesn't have to do anything. There's more revenue, and that is the point. The point is to ensure that the economic framework is such that it leads to increased economic activity. And when you have increased economic activity, you can have additional revenues without imposing burdens on the backs of Jamaicans. That was a practice of the past, that additional revenues would come from additional burdens being imposed on the back of Jamaicans. We have broken that practice.
There's one area where I've seen, Minister, an additional $1.2 billion in telecommunications licenses. There's an additional amount coming from telecommunications licenses of $1.2 billion.
Sorry, repeat that, sir. You
Yes.
said,
There's an amount of $1.2 billion from telecommunications
what page
licenses.
are you on? Just to make sure we're looking at the same thing.
I'm looking at page 2 of your
Page 2 of the revenue estimates, okay?
Yes.
1.2 billion from telecommunication license. Okay, yes?
Yes. This was not, in my reckoning, anticipated. What new licenses are being issued, and you will recall last year the minister did announce the award of a new player in the telecoms industry. To date, we haven't seen that player being activated. What did we collect from that new player? And what does this represent, this 1.2?
Right. Some of your questions are best posed to the minister when he takes his chair. But I will point you to the column that says estimates for 2022-23. You'll see that, you know, on an annual basis, we have had license income coming in, 1.5 billion for 2 fiscal years ago, or last fiscal year rather, and 1.8 billion for this fiscal year. In terms of the estimate, yeah.
Yes,
So,
right.
so this may point into stuff that's a little different from what you're thinking. Yeah.
Well, I think I need to ask the minister.
You need to ask the minister, yeah.
Because this is a bit confusing. I
Yes,
don't expect
I
any
understand.
new
I understand.
revenues coming
I
in.
understand. I understand.
Could you provide an update? CAP, I know, is mining, but I think it falls under your portfolio. The recovered from the fire, I think the insurance paid out and they're back at production. Could you give us an update on the status of the company?
I mean, on the good news, CAP is producing again, and if you'd seen the results, the GDP results for this year, mining has been up considerably, if I'm not mistaken. Mining output has been up by 70, 80, 90%. A lot of that has been due to, you know, CAP's research, not CAP, Jamalco's resurgence, and CAP is a 45% shareholder in Jamalco. However, we're not necessarily out of the woods yet, so to speak, in that there's still a lot of work to be done. And, you know, right now Jamalco is operating at 85% capacity, which, as I mentioned, that's one of the reasons why we've seen the major growth in mining for this year. And you'll recall that growth has come in above expectations for this year, in large part, or I shouldn't say in large part, definitely Jamalco's overperformance vis-a-vis the previous year would be a heavy contributing factor. But we are not out of the woods yet, member, because there's still a lot of work to be done. And, you know, my stated position on this, that this is not an asset that the government should be in. I know from the time of former Prime Minister Golding in 2010, they've been trying to dispose of it. And it's not, I just say for the record, my sincere belief that this asset ought not to be with the government of Jamaica. But I'm just responding to what you have to say. So we're not out of the woods yet, is what that would be my summary statement.
Just a follow-up related to the bauxite levy. I saw somewhere in the estimates that we don't plan to collect anything in terms of the bauxite levy. Is that correct for the next fiscal year, and why is that so?
Yeah, well, remember that in terms of alumina companies operating in Jamaica, we only have two. We have Windalco and we have Jamalco. Jamalco, ever since the government acquired a 45% stake 20 odd years ago, Jamalco has never paid a levy for the last 2.5 decades. With respect to Windalco, Windalco has honored its levy payments up until the time that we gave them a reprieve. They went through a tough time and they owed levies, you'll recall. We agreed a time schedule for them to pay those levies. And I must share with Jamaica through this house that Windalco came in ahead of that schedule and provided the balance of payments, the balance of the outstanding amounts ahead of the schedule that had been established. I think it's a show of tremendous good faith. I brought to this house I made a statement to this house to inform the house and the country that we had agreed to a waiver of the levy for Windalco for a period of 2 years to give them the opportunity to retool and to make the necessary investments. It's public information because UC Rosal is a publicly traded company, and its ultimate parent, EN Plus, is on the London Stock Exchange, and EN Plus is chaired by an American and has a number of Americans on the board. It's public information that they came under serious financial difficulties, and the
Not to
extension of
confuse
the
you,
waiver on the
this
levy
explanation he's giving, you remember the issue Maxine Waters
assist
have with
in
the
ensuring that the necessary investments are
Windalco
made in
Russian
Jamaica,
company went to
notwithstanding their
China.
financial
This is the
difficulties,
explanation he's
and that
giving.
the
Sorry
plant
to bother you.
remains operational. And the absence of those two entities from paying the levy largely accounts for the observation that you've made.
We would resume the levy in 25-26, not 24-25.
No, not 24. No, we just gave the levy in 23-24. So it would be 23 to 24, 24 to 25.
So 25-26.
Yeah,
Right.
at some point in that year. Yes.
Are there any other questions? If there, so we now put the pages 20,000 Ministry of Finance and Public Service, page 1 to 26, head 20,000 C, capital pages 1 through 18. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. We now call head number 01000, Office of the Prime Minister, Minister Robert Morgan, Minister Dana Morris Dixon, Minister Homer Davis.
Let's thank the Ministry of Finance for their presentation. Unusually short. Too many goodies.
I need this book for the
And we will now have the Prime Minister's office.
No. Look, I'm coming to discuss that thing.
Too many goodies.
Hmm? Yeah, 4 p.m. Hey, Dana. Yes. Dana Peter and Liz. Liz is always a customer. That's the bulk of it, I think. Well, on everything, but NIDS is a flashpoint. And then all of these, anything that looks like a reduction, like any of these social projects that look like they're reducing
Minister
it,
Malone, would you be able to?
and anything that looks like it has increased in cost.
It would be in the afternoon. So once you check with them, please just notify and then we take it from there. Thanks.
We'll keep monitoring until they come back, but Nigel can really dance around a question without providing an answer, even acknowledging the question properly. But what he was explaining with the UC Russell when
We now
Dalco
invite head
situation.
15,000, Office of the Prime Minister, Ministers Dana Morris Dixon, Robert Morgan, and State Minister Homer Davis is with us, and they are joined by the Minister of Finance and Public Service, Minister Clarke. You may proceed.
So, Mr. Nesta
Welcome
Alai.
to the team as well from Office of the Prime Minister.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of my colleagues, we have no opening statement. We could just proceed to questions.
Thank
We will
you.
first have Member Robinson.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm on page 15,004 under rehabilitation and maintenance works. And there's a figure. This activity supports the maintenance costs of the Executive Office, Jamaica House, and Vale Royal. Could you indicate what is the sum that is allocated for the maintenance of Vale Royal and what specific activities are taking place to maintain that facility?
So we just want to know what you're referring to.
15,004 at the bottom.
At the bottom.
And you say activity
I see. Yes.
10205.
Yes.
So I'm asking a specific question in relation to Vale Royal.
Right. So the amount there is for all three. We have not split out the amount for Vale Royal.
I know, which is why I'm asking, because as you may have seen in the public domain, Vale Royal is in a state of disrepair, and there is clearly a sum in the budget allocated for its maintenance. And that's why I'm asking what that sum is and what activities are taking place to maintain the facility, which has fallen into total disrepair.
Thank you,
I
Member.
can share the live, please, people.
The sum here encompasses the maintenance of all the properties. As it relates specifically to Vale Royal, there has been a lot of public conversation recently about Vale Royal. We're also concerned. And the Jamaica National Heritage Trust is currently in the process of crafting a rehabilitation plan for Vale Royal. That would not be in this allocation here.
No, I fully understand that,
the monies
Minister.
that would come from this for Vale Royal is to deal with security, is to deal with the overall management of the property. But the building is a very old building that has not been maintained properly over time, and this is going to require significant um, financial infusion to fix.
No, I
And that is
understand
what is
that.
being planned now
So
by JNST.
the question is, are we going to allow the facility to physically disintegrate and fall apart before anything is done?
No, that is not the plan. That is why the Prime Minister mandated the Ministry of Culture and the Jamaica National Heritage Trust to urgently craft a plan to see to the rehabilitation of the facility.
And when can we expect that plan to be made public? So stakeholders, like in my constituency, as the Member of Parliament, are anxious about what is going to happen to that space. When would we know what the plans are of the government for that space?
Well, I'll have to contact the Jamaica National Heritage Trust to see what their timeline is through Minister Grange, and we'll definitely report back to Parliament and to you directly as to
But
what
in
the timeline is.
in the interim, while the Jamaica National Heritage Trust does its study or its proposal about the future, what is the plan to just keep it in a state that it doesn't fall apart? Because literally, that's what's taking place right now.
Well, there has been some work that has been done to reduce the speed of deterioration until the rehabilitation can take place. I am aware on several occasions, workmen have gone there to essentially stop things from disintegrating. That is not sufficient, and we agree that that is not sufficient, which is why I think the proper solution is a proper full rehabilitation of the property.
Can I ask, can you indicate there are assets that would have been in the building, furniture, paintings, other things of that value? Can you indicate whether those are being stored somewhere or whether they are still in the building?
So the challenge with the building is not, the facade is what has deteriorated. It is not the internal aspects of the building. A contractor has gone in recently to do some shoring up works. There are people at the building, employees of the Office of the Prime Minister, who do general maintenance of the internals of the building, and the assets that are there are very secure.
So they're still physically there. Everything is still physically there.
So what you see, that picture that you saw with the frontage, that is not what is happening inside the building. The building is not just the front of the
No,
facility.
we wouldn't know because nobody has access to it. So, but I just
And
want to know
also,
that the
some of
assets
the
are
paintings,
protected.
there are different categories of assets. Some of the paintings were sent to National Gallery, those that are sensitive to moisture and other exposures. A lot of the furniture is still there, they are safe. A lot of the utensils are also there, they are safe. I remember there are also buildings at the back, concrete facilities around there that are very secure.
Is there going to be any public input from the Jamaica National Heritage consultation so that the public can have a say in terms of what the building, the future of that facility
We will have
be?
to. I mean, we could never, as a government, seek to do a rehabilitation of such an important landmark without the contribution of the persons who live in the community and other interested parties from across the island. So there is no intention of doing any work there of any significant nature without especially consultations with you as the representative.
And can you give us a time frame? Is this
I
24, 25,
I could not.
25, 26? When we're talking about?
As I said to you, I would have to contact the JNHT to hear what their timeline for their plan is. And then when they get back to the Office of the Prime Minister, we will definitely reach out to you before to let you know how long they're going to take to do their planning, as well as what the plan for the government is after we receive the plan in terms of consultation and in terms of engagement with various stakeholders.
All right, I'll pause here. I know my colleague wants to follow up on this matter.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Morning, ministers. I want to pick up where my colleague left off because this is, Minister Morgan, you would have known that even in the House in certain sessions, we've had this discussion about Vale Royal. And I know you say JNHT is going to be responsible for it through the attending minister, which is Olivia Babsy-Grange, Minister Grange. The problem, though, is that while you have the 57 million in the Office of the Prime Minister, which is required to have the maintenance, it is a Jamaica National Heritage Site, as we do with many sites across the country. But in the budget for JNHT in the Ministry of Culture, there is no increase there. So I think what we're trying to find out, and this is not a, it's not a contentious issue, because for me, this is one of our, this is a, this is a site that talks about our democracy and my patriotism. So as a member of the opposition, I'm not here to be cantankerous about it, but what I want to hear from you, is it that we're going to have a special grant that comes to the Ministry of Culture? Is it that there's going to be a special committee that is put in place? Because this is going to require not the 10 million I see in administration here for the JNHT, or the I think it's something like 400 million for all of the sites across the island. This is going to, 100, I don't have my glasses. This is going to require specific funds, so that when people drive in that quadrangle from Jamaica House, or somebody comes and says, well, this is the office, this is the home of the Prime Minister, or this is where we have special events. What I'm trying to get from you, Minister, is, and the country is trying to get it, would you be prepared to say that this is going to be a special project of the government with the required funding that is important towards it? Because in either part that you speak to, there is no funding there to do what you say will be done.
So thank you for that question. And we share your the implied view that you're expressing of the important symbolism of this very important Jamaican monument. We are going to have to prioritize it among a long list of priorities, some of which are very pressing and large. But we can't allow this to fall apart, and we will make sure resources are provided to get it done.
I'm not sure what's happening. It would mean that Member Paul was first.
Minister, I'm trying to inquire where we are with the new Parliament building. Is it on pause, or is it going to happen? I'm trying to get a clarification as well in relation to the responsibilities for Minister Morris Dixon in relation to the wider ICT portfolio, because I'm still not too clear as to where the line is. For example, there's a project for the government to increase its use of ICTs across, and it was felt that it ought to be in OPM as opposed to the line ministry. I'd like to understand who is managing that aspect of the portfolio.
So with respect to the first question on the Houses of Parliament, as you know, there was a competition, a design team was selected, and it has been costed, and there was a procurement process that at the end encountered a few difficulties, and we are responding to those challenges. The government is committed to the new House of Parliament. It's a project that the Prime Minister himself has spearheaded, but at the same time, the government intends to abide by the rules and procedures of the government, and sometimes that is in conflict with the priority of getting something done. But a project as important as this and as large, as impactful as this, it's important that all the right procedures are followed, and thereafter the construction can commence. So we're still within the domain of finding a suitable contractor to build a Parliament building. So there's no procurement process on now, but I'm saying that's the stage that we're at.
So, Minister, is the delay 2 years, 3 years, 4 years?
You mean, you're asking when will we,
Are you still
break
anticipating,
ground?
yes, a start for this?
I would,
Because the procurement hasn't happened as yet. Then, and based on what you've just said, that seemed to me at least.
well, I mean, I can't, I'm sure the Prime Minister will address it in his presentation, and I wouldn't want to speak before him. But this is something to.
So it's not going to happen this year.
Huh? There's no provision in the budget this year
Right.
for it. However, I know that it is something that is a high priority for the government.
Yeah, ICT.
Thank you very much for your question of seeking clarity in relation to the responsibilities vis-a-vis technology. So what has been done is that a kind of portfolio called digital transformation has been established at the Office of the Prime Minister. And it's been put there because of the importance of the area in relation to not just in terms of the delivery of government service, but also generally in terms of Jamaica moving with where the globe is going. And in addition to that, it was put in the Office of the Prime Minister also because we understood that there are synergies across every single ministry, and every single ministry has a part to play in this digital transformation of government and also of society. And so in terms of the actual areas that fall under this rubric, we would have the NIDS project that had previously been housed at the Office of the Prime Minister. Also, eGov now resides within that portfolio. We also have the broadband project, the broader broadband project residing there. Data protection is also a part of the framework, as is Jamaica Post. So those are the main areas that fall under the portfolio. And as you can see, all of those are really critical elements that working together do set the stage for a lot of the work that we want to do, from making the delivery of government services more
All of
efficient
them
and
know what she talk about
incorporating new technology across
in
the
the
government
office of the
space,
Prime Minister.
to looking at how, in terms of the infrastructural framework in Jamaica, that we have the infrastructure in terms of broadband supporting this digital thrust that we are on.
Member Howell, are you
Yeah.
okay or?
The Chief Information Officer
Sure.
resides in your ministry
Correct.
or ICT?
Correct.
Okay. Is that person in place?
That person has been in place for a bit over 1 year, and that person is the one that is leading on the implementation of the Data Protection Act. If we look on their website, they have a website which has a lot of information on the data protection laws and how to implement it. On social media, we've seen the Information Commissioner quite active there, and we've done a lot of sensitization sessions across various business sector groupings to look at how we can. I'm very pleased to note that even the implementation that was done on December 1 came out of active collaboration and consultation with the private sector groups in terms of how do we implement something that has such far-reaching implications for Jamaica. And those consultations and discussions will continue, because an act such as the Data Protection Act is pretty fundamental to this digital transformation that we're doing. And it's important that we take the business sector along with us and keep getting feedback from them and implementing based on the feedback that we do get.
Are you okay with that, Member Paulwell? Next, we will have Member Hilton.
Thank you, Chair. Ministers, my area of inquiry is in the integrated community program that is in 15 capital project 15.
Like the live, please. Like up the live, please.
Pages page 15C11, integrated community development project 2. firstly, this project in its objective describes what is obviously something of interest to uh, urban representative like myself. Where is the project now in terms of its programming? Is that done? What's the process for programming this particular budgetary item?
I'm not sure I understand what you're asking.
Well, I mean, this speaks to infrastructure and services for urban communities.
Right. So
Right.
you're
So-
asking where we are?
No, so I'm saying, is this programmed? Are the programs for this budgetary item completed, and what is the process of?
Yes, yes. So what for this year, the
Mm.
project will be implemented in 5 communities, and there'll be 2 integrated infrastructure communities. I can give you details in terms of the places and
Well, yeah, you say the places. Yeah.
well, they'll be constructing a cold storage facility in Colleyville, and for the St. Elizabeth Agriculture Development Organization, they'll be commencing greenhouse construction in Water Valley, in Watermount, in Moko, Ewaton, Harmons, Miles Gully.
Wait a minute, but I thought this thing says urban infrastructure.
No, we're looking at give me a little hold on. This is rural. You see, we're doing it all over the country. We have rural, we have urban. They just handed me the right. This one integrated. Yes, when I heard Moko to my left. Yeah. Sorry. Let me go over what we'll be doing for 24-25. Rehabilitating farm roads from Lime Tree to Mendes Town, as well as some school infrastructure projects in low-income vulnerable communities, improving access to education and training. And as it says on note 7, there are 5 communities we targeted,
Yeah.
and 2 integrated infrastructure development projects.
And I'm interested if any of those are urban.
Yes,
inner
these are
city-
urban.
Inner city communities.
These are urban projects as opposed to the rural equivalent.
Okay. And this has been, JSIF is the implementing body.
Yes.
Is this a part of because it has a security component? I understand. Is this a part of what the Ministry of National Security?
No.
Okay.
Well, no. I mean, this program has always been in the Prime Minister's office.
Okay.
And we'll be, as I said, there'll be 1 infant school constructed, 3 primary schools will be expanded, and so forth.
Okay.
Yeah.
May I ask the ministers, where is, so I understand rural electrification is in JSIF, parts of it. Well, where is the rural electrification program? House?
Thank you. So that's the Ministry of Science and Technology. You would be aware that there are some communities now currently being electrified. The junior minister, I think, is leading. I think that's member from St. Elizabeth, Mr. Hutchinson, is leading the process. Is leading that process. So it's a collaboration between JSIF and the Ministry of Science, Energy, and Technology.
And that comes.
So JSIF is as you know, that JSIF is primarily in many cases a funding agency. So JSIF would go out, and whether they get money from central government or they get program money, and then they collaborate with other agencies or other ministries to spend that money.
But JSIF is housed under ministry, currently under.
JSIF is still under the office of the Prime Minister, but rural
Please,
electrification
another one.
is in Minister Vaz's ministry.
Right. Okay. So where is the regularization of electricity?
That's a part of the project that they're doing now. What they have.
That JSIF is doing now?
JSIF in collaboration with the ministry. So so for example, on one of the occasions that I was present, they are not only putting in transmitters, transmission lines and transformers, but they're also doing inspections and installation of electrical wiring in homes as well.
In urban inner city areas?
What I do know is that they are going across the island. But I know that part of the challenge over the years is that, as you would be aware, there were challenges previously with the precursor to the current project. And what they're doing now is ramping up electrification. So I know that Minister Vaz has been to at least about 8 communities across the island so far, along with Minister Hutchinson. And I'm sure he will update you as to
Yeah,
the urban side of it.
yeah, I'm interested in the whole electricity regularization program in the urban areas, and whether that is a component of JSIF's work and what is the funding source.
Okay.
That's what I'm interested in.
So I'll definitely, I'm sure Minister Vaz, when he sits here, can give you a full outline
Okay.
of where that project is currently.
Okay.
Chair, this is related to Heart Trust. Can you indicate the target for the number of persons that you intend to train under the Youth at Risk program, and how many you have actually done for the fiscal year, which is ending March 31st?
If you remember the Youth at Risk program, 10 million of what Camilla gave in 2023
I have a particular interest in this project, which I consider to be a very good project, but it is not, in my view, it doesn't seem to be heavily promoted or implemented. And I've spoken to the Heart Trust personnel about ways in which we can improve the project. One of the issues with the project is the lag time for the payment of the stipend that is offered to those persons who participate. And because it is generally done 2 weeks in the lag, and the persons who we're targeting are just not in a position to get to the location without the small stipend. I've recommended using an alternative means, because many of them don't have bank accounts. They struggle to open an account, and that's the biggest reason why people drop out. So I want to know what percentage of your target you have reached in terms of the training, and whether you're addressing some of those issues, which I believe are quick, easy wins, which can have a positive impact on the outturn in terms of the number of people trained.
All right. Thank you very much for that question. And it's an interesting question, because just this morning before we started, I had a discussion with a colleague on that particular program and looking at that program. And I do have the numbers, and I will talk a bit about how we're going to revamp it also. So in terms of the target, it was 3,867 individuals, and the actual persons under that, it's 2,997 is the actual. So 88% of the target. And I believe this would be to the end of last month. But this project is a really important one, and it is also one that is a lot more community centric. And that's one of the things for this year going forward that HEART has been asked to focus on, more community-based interventions that can reach to our young people. We have a lot of talk about labor shortages, and I think as you go around the country and you go into many communities and you speak to the young people, you see the labor right there in front of your eyes. But we need to be able to reach to them, and there are many reasons we're not reaching them in relation to, even though tuition is free, it is the additional costs, traveling to the location, clothes, I mean, basic things that we have to address. And so this program, which has the stipend incorporated in it, is really a good program because of the stipend, but also because it's much more community directed. And so one of the things that we're going to be looking at is how do we speed up payment? And it's not just with this program, it's with other programs, in terms of how do you speed up payment and not have, individuals complaining, it's 2 weeks late, or payments are 2 weeks late. And that has been a focus of HEART during the course of
What is being
this
done
year.
about that? I mean, I hate to press this issue, but I have taken a particular interest in it. I have 2 sites in my constituency. I have shared with the HEART personnel how I think it could be resolved. I have recommended a pilot so they could test an alternative way of paying the youngsters. But to be honest, I don't see no movement. And I know things take time, but this is a easy relatively quick win, and it will make a tremendous difference in terms of the lives of these young
And
people.
and we agree 100% with you. And that is why we will be focusing more efforts in the program in terms of funding towards the program itself, and then dealing with the issues in terms of
Are you going to
payments that we have had. And one of
pilot
the things, I can
project?
give you one example, on a different program, under LIFT, where we had 509 students who were taken in. We had to sit with them and get them their bank accounts. We brought the banks to them who were there working with them. And I think that kind of collaboration where we actually work with these individuals to ensure that we can have them truly feel like they're a part of this economy, and feeling that, something as simple as a bank account is a very powerful tool. And so where they don't have the bank account, it is our responsibility to work with them and work with our private sector partners to deliver the bank account, and also
One
to
of the
look at other
challenges
ways.
is that the banks, these are not the most attractive customers for the banks. And so they're not necessarily eager to sign them up because they don't have a lot of money, and we understand that. And that's why I've recommended something as an alternative to the bank accounts, which the minister in the middle promoted, and which I believe Jamdex and other means as a way of getting that part of the central bank digital currency moving.
Correct.
Yeah.
And also, I know you just said that the banks, they're not lucrative to the banks. But I do have to say that, especially in some of the other programs and in recent interactions with the banks, there have been a few of the banks that have been very open to working with or hard students. And so they have been implementing, for example, the low KYC accounts where you don't need as much information, and they have been partnering with us. So yes, it may seem that they're not necessarily the target, but I do think that some of our banks are quite open to working with us and have been working with us, and recognize that students who leave hard, given the global dynamics, skills training, those who are skilled are the ones that are getting jobs here and globally. And so they recognize that these students, yes, they may not have a lot of money now, but they do have earning potential in the future. And that's the way we framed it, and we've been getting good responses from the bank. And we will also explore CBDC, because that's another thing we do want to promote.
In relation to the NUYP, the National Unattached Youth Program, it was suspended, I think, a number of years ago. I think there was a review that was undertaken, but we haven't heard anything since then. I know it's very cash heavy for HEART. Does HEART plan to resume that program, or is the Youth at Risk program the alternative to what we used to do on the NUYP?
There are a couple different ways to look at it, and what we're understanding and looking at is there are different needs for different people, and we have to understand that there is not just one monolithic group of young people. There are many different people that need different needs, and we also have to think about those who are also older, because you do have older individuals who do want to do some training. And the issue we had was that you had these very short term programs, maybe 3 weeks or 4 weeks sometimes. And there was questions about quality of the delivery of those programs versus those where you actually get certification at the end. And I think our administration believes that we need to tackle it on multiple fronts. There are times when we have to do those shorter term training programs, and then there are times when we are going to have to do the longer ones. And one of the things that we are looking at now is how we can look at other alternatives. The LIFT program is seen as one of those. That's kind of an alternative, but there are also other alternatives that we're looking at. But we do recognize, though, that we're going to have to take multiple approaches. It's not going to be a one size fits all. And so there'll be short programs, there'll be long programs, there'll be some programs without stipends, there'll be some that are very stipend heavy. But whatever we have to do to reach the labor pool that we know is there is what we're going to have to do. And so even attached to that is truly understanding that group that is unattached, or that we call outside of the labor force, understanding that number Why are they not taking up the training courses? We're doing a big study right now to understand them more. And one of the things is we don't want to be a heart that stays in an office and says this is what we need to do for skills training. It is very important that we understand and we listen to our young people and our middle-aged people who want to do skills training. How is the best way for us to deliver it to you?
All
And
right,
so what I'm
Minister.
saying is that we're being more
All right, but let me
open
come
to
back to my
methods.
question though.
Yeah.
On the, are you going to resume the NUYP?
Well, what we're looking at is whether or not we couldn't use lift and expand lift and use other parts of it, but you'd end up with a very similar program probably under another
A
name.
different name. All
Yeah.
right, right. Thank you. Chairman, I'm going to just beg your little indulgence to the Minister of Finance because I forgot to ask you a question when you were here before.
No, time over.
The time done? Time come now, you know. Time come now.
Time over. Time over. Time done.
Minister, you on the issue of the census, I heard you say that data collection has been completed in terms of the census. And when I heard that, I was concerned because I know a large number of people who have not been contacted or enumerated. Can you indicate the rationale for closing off data collection, and can you say how many people have been enumerated by the census takers?
So thank you for the question, member. Relevant question. I plan to provide a proper update in my presentation. I am, I am supposed to receive a full brief shortly, and that will provide some of the answers to your questions. But I know what underlines some of the questions is, how can we say that about data collection, and we know there are people who ostensibly worked in the census and they have reported that have not been paid.
Well, that's one issue.
I know.
Yeah.
But payment for work in the census, it can only be made. Jamaica is a country of laws. Everything that every public official does is subject to review by an auditor general. The officers that sat in cannot but observe the law and the rules. And the rules are that the survey has to be completed and instructions are very clear.
I'm willing to share with you
Yeah.
specific information. I hear that, but I'm telling you, there has been a problem at Statin on this matter. The complaints I've gotten are not from one or two people. I'm talking about people who have worked as supervisors, census takers, people who have done things, who their surveys have been verified as complete, signed off by Statin, them do everything, and them can't get the money.
Yeah,
I can give you the examples.
No, I hear you on that, and I must say that each example that has come to me, because a lot of them have been routed my way, and I've checked with Statin, there's something outstanding. And in some cases, what is a little unfortunate is that what might be outstanding in some cases is work by a supervisor or by some other party. I can give you examples of members on your side who have brought individuals to my attention, who have gone in and we have looked, and that has been the result. And when they make those corrections, payment occurs. That is what has happened, member. But I will, on your other questions, I'm not in a position right now to answer them, but I will provide a full update in my budget presentation in a few days.
Member Hilton,
Yeah,
and
you,
then
Chair.
Member Phillips.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Minister Dixon, the heart, I want to shift focus now to the industry needs. I've been working in a particular district, business district of Spanish Town Road, which is an industrial belt, working with heart for years, trying to get a specific programs to address stated industry needs. And I was expecting someone from Heart here today because we've had meetings, several meetings on this, and I wrote last night to say I need an update on this. And I don't see the person that I've been talking to. But we need a response to the business district and the business needs.
That's the Minister of Information.
Particularly and specific in the area of logistics. They've been asking for it for years, and we have gotten very little in the way of a response.
All right. Thank you for that question. And I think that is something that we share in terms of our observations, in terms of responsiveness, and that has to be addressed. The logistics area is obviously an area that is very important and holds a lot of value for the country. And one of the things that we have to do is to ensure that our skills training matches the demand, current demand and future demand. And so there is an innovation called sector skills councils. And that has worked really well in the BPO space, where the BPO sector, the Global Services Association, has come together and they have set up a business skills council. And what they do is they actually work with HEART to develop the training programs, and they give their numbers in terms of their projections so that HEART can tailor and move its instructors around and so on to meet those needs. And that is something that has to be replicated in other industries, such as manufacturing and logistics. And I'm very happy to tell you that we do have a program coming up with support from the IDB in order to set up sector skills councils in logistics and in manufacturing, where HEART will be able to be more closely interconnected. And also the construction industry is another one that we're looking at, because there's actually a lot of demand there for skills. So HEART will no longer just be developing its curriculum on its own, but will be directed by the Skills Council, which is led by the industries themselves and the persons who have businesses in those sectors. So that is something that's really, really important. And as you said, on the logistics side, if we're truly going to be able to be successful in that sector, we're going to have the skills there, and we won't do it alone as HEART. We can't. We have to work with the entities.
So I've been at it for over 7 years.
I know.
How soon is this expected to be in place?
Well, we have an approval now, Minister. Thanks to Minister Clarke on that, I can say that we have an approval, and we expect during the course of this year that to come on stream. We don't have to wait for the funding in terms of funding the businesses to be able to organize themselves in this. We can already start the overtures to them because we know the funding is coming during the course of this year through the IDB project. And I will ensure that we move quickly on the logistics side.
This is the one in a blue, I tell lie. She is the only
Just
one
looking
with
at your enrollment
certification.
numbers and comparing it to previous years,
Correct.
even with the free entry level, meaning cost-wise, not seeing that great uptick in the enrollment numbers, and also no improvement in your certification numbers. Can you elaborate on what are the challenges and what you expect to
All right.
do?
My numbers are a little bit different. I'm not sure where that's coming from, but the numbers I have showed that with the elimination of fees for persons who are in the HEART system up to an associate degree, that we saw a 15% increase in enrollment as opposed to the previous year. That's what the data shows. In terms of enrollment, and I can go more specifically in the data, in 22, there were 129,957 persons enrolled. And in the 2023-24, which we wouldn't have the full month, but up to January, we were at 128,81. So up to January, we were almost at what we did the previous year. There is obviously a little bit of a lag, because when you do decrease the fees, we saw the uptick in demand for the programs, but you're not able to expand the number of trainers as quickly as you can. So there's a little bit of a lag, but we do see the uptick in demand, and we also see an increase in the enrollment numbers. So by the end of March, we are expecting to see that 15% coming through in the numbers. In terms of certification, the certification numbers also increased, and we are working through that in terms of certification. Well, we already know it was 15%, and they're saying that they may actually see it being 21% by the end of the term, but we don't know.
Yeah.
I'll wait until we have the actual numbers in place. In terms of certification, that has also increased. There have been some issues in terms of getting the certificates out, but that's an internal process.
In a previous meeting,
Yeah, you have to bring the whole thing over.
Your mic, not mine.
All right, I think this is something we can fix with. Yes.
yeah, in a previous meeting, we're trying to break out if the increase in certification was coming from the lag that you had behind, and if you could disseminate what is being done in the current year vis-a-vis those that were overdue and included in the current year.
I think in terms of the numbers, they don't usually use the lag numbers in terms of the current year. So our enrollment, they shouldn't be used.
Well,
I will make sure.
Yes.
And I'll
So,
check to see
hence.
if it is still being done, but
Yeah.
that should never be done. What should be done is you look at the students who have enrolled in that particular year, and you look at how many have been
I'll
certified.
ask you to just check on
I
those
will. I
numbers.
will.
On page 23 of the public bodies, the income statement, there's a $3 billion increase in training costs, which includes subventions. 23 public bodies.
What's the question?
Yeah. So just an explanation on what are the that amount of $3 billion. What programs will that be put into for a $3 billion increase in the training and subsidy?
All right, there are a lot of programs that we are participating in, including LIFT, which is a new one, which is over $1 billion that it costs for us to implement LIFT. We're also contributing to the GNSC, which is with the JDF, which is a significant contribution from HART. And we're also ramping up
But aren't those existing programs?
Pardon?
Aren't those existing programs?
So
Are you
LIFT
expanding?
we are expanding, yes. And
So you're
GNSC,
doing-
we have expanded, and we are going to be expanding in LIFT. The first year of LIFT, the resources would have come from another program and not from HART, but we will have to take it on going forward. In addition to that, we also are doing new programs, which are very interesting programs. So for example, we have a robotics program that is in St. Elizabeth. And why is it in St. Elizabeth? How do you put a robotics program in St. Elizabeth? It's because we understand that given the climate change concerns we have in agriculture, we're going to have to use technology, and our students of agriculture are going to have to be conversant with new technology. And so programs like that, and mechatronics, which is another program which is using more of the robotics in manufacturing. We would have heard one of our key manufacturers of bread and other products saying that in their new plant that they're going to be building, they're going to be using automation and robots. But we have to have students who understand that. And so we're rolling out a lot of new programs, especially on the digital end, so that as our manufacturers retool, that we don't have a situation where we do not have students to fill those jobs going forward. So when you look at those numbers, it's programs like LIFT, existing programs, doing more work in the communities, but also looking at expansion in new programs that have a very high technology content to them.
One of the questions I've asked is, especially for those on the LIFT program, when they have completed that year, will they leave with a certification in that area that they are working in?
in terms of LIFT, the goal of LIFT was really supposed to be both, getting our students social mobility and also getting them job experience. These are students who already have CXCs. So when we think about
Still
some level
minimum, still
of,
minimum.
yeah, it's a
Yes,
minimum, but they
yes.
do have, a lot of them have their CXCs, and most of them have 5 CXCs, which is significant in the Jamaican context. So they are a different group. So we weren't envisioning giving them certification per se, because some of them are working in the private sector. Some are working in the public sector. Some of them are working as receptionists, procurement officers. They're working in many different areas. What we are doing is ensuring, though, that all of the students who go through LIFT, they have all of their social documents. So they get their NIS, they are learning to drive, which is wonderful to have all of these 500 students in driving school now. And so they will graduate with their driver's
That's
license.
more revenue for the minister when they license a vehicle.
Yes, and then when these students leave, having gotten all of this support, and remember, they also got psychometric testing. This is the first time in our history that we've been psychometrically testing students. So they come in, we know where their strengths are. Pardon? Yes, you should. I think everyone should do psychometric testing. We should all do psychometric testing. It's a very useful tool. And so all of these students know where their strengths are and where their weaknesses are. And we've tailored the interventions to that. And that is really key. And one of the key deficiencies was in customer service. And that's why we're spending a lot of time with them while they're deployed all over Jamaica, working on that.
So the short answer is no, there's no certification at
No.
the end of
But
this.
it's still a great program.
But wouldn't you think that at the end of this program, working in whichever department, be it customer service, be it procurement, a certification, that just in case that entity that they work with doesn't keep them on, at least they leave with something for future employment?
I think your suggestion is a very fine suggestion, and we will look at it. As we said, this is our first year of the program. We don't know everything. We want to explore it, and we're open
It's a
to.
proposal I'm saying
We're
to
open
look
to
at.
that, definitely.
Thank you, Minister. And I'll, yes, I want to thank you. No, the idea behind Lift Member, when we thought about it, was to create a facility where one of the biggest complaints that we had from young people who were leaving high school and they were going through that transition, some of them between high school and tertiary, or going from high school to a job, was funding for tertiary and also job experience. And I think one of the great things about LIFT is that it gives them both. They will leave with all the necessary documents, as Minister has said. They will leave with savings. They will leave with a bank account. They will also leave with experience in their area of competence. And that will give them a leg up in the labor market as well. I prefer to. Of course.
Members, initially we called head 15,000. I want to make sure that members are aware that the following categories apply in the event you have additional questions. 15,000 Office of the Prime Minister, 15,000 C Office of the Prime Minister Capital, 15,010 Jamaica Information Service, 1520 Registrar General's Department and Island Records, 1539 Post and Telecommunications Department. And the pages are as follows. 15,000 pages 1 through 18, 15,000 C 1 through 19, 15,010 pages 1 through 6, 15,020 pages 1 through 5, and last but not least, 15,039 pages 1 through 7. I put all the pages and the heads. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Additionally, added to Office of the Cabinet under head 16,000 is 16,049. Management Institute for National Development also sits under the head Office of Cabinet. It is section or head 16,049. I put pages 1 through 5. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister of Finance, representing the Ministry of Finance and Public Service, Minister Dana Morris Dixon, Minister Robert Morgan. Thank you very much, and thank you to your team for your time here this morning.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, before we move to the next, just when we were doing Ministry of Finance, we approved 20,000, but remember that we have 20,011 down to 20,061 that also need to be formally approved. So if we could just do that as a customary
Yes,
matter.
agreed. I noticed it for head 16,000. So let me do the same and separate all the heads. So Ministry of Finance was approved, head 20,000, pages 1 through 26. For the CapEx, which is 20,000 C, pages 1 through 18. For Accountant General's Department, head 20,011, pages 1 through 4. For Jamaica Customs Agency, head 20012, pages 1 through 8. For Public Debt Service Amortization, pages 1 to 6, it's 20,017. For head 20,018, Public Debt Servicing, Interest and Payments, pages 1 through 9. Head 20,019, Pensions, and that's pages 1 through 9. TAJ, that's Tax Administration Jamaica, head 20,056, pages 1 through 5. $20,060, Financial Investigations Division, pages 1 to 3. Head 20,061, Revenue Protection Division, pages 1 through 3. Head 26,000, sorry, I'm done, kept moving. So we're finished at head 2061, Revenue Protection Division, pages 1 through 3. Members, I would like to put all the foregoing under the Ministry of Finance and Public Service, all the attended heads and pages listed. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Thank you, members. Thank you, team.
I
Member
think
Malahou, for a moment, please.
let me see what they're doing here. But thank you all for joining. Thank you all for joining and listening to the lies and the confusion. We need to listen to them. We are in an election year because general election is a year and odd away. So one can view all of these to hold them to their promises. On the 21st of this month, the Prime Minister will be making his budget statement. Also, the 18th of this month is when Criminal Commission contract comes to an end. Will he be extended another 4 years, or will the commish be replaced by another set of criminal. But thank you all very much. Because of this broadcast, we won't bother with Drive Time London. Come back 6 p.m. Eastern Time.
Madam Chair.
Hold on.
Madam Chair.
Let me see what this liar wants.
Madam Chair, before I leave, I've just been reminded as well that we need to, while I approve 1,000 and all of the commissions of Parliament down to 10,000.
Oh, I stepped out at that
Yeah.
time.
So
let me do that as well. Members, approved before was head 1,000, 1 through 4, His Excellency the Governor General and staff, Houses of Parliament, 2,000, pages 1 through 6, Office of the Public Defender, under head 3,000, pages 1 through 4, head 5,000, Auditor General, pages 1 through 4, head 6,000, Office of the Services Commission, pages 1 through 5, head 7,000, Office of the Children's Advocate, pages 1 through 5, head 8,000, Independent Commission of Investigation, page 1 through 5, head 9,000, Integrity Commission, page 1 through 6, head 10,000, Independent Fiscal Commission, pages 1 through 3, and that concludes the heads from 1,000 to 10,000. Members, those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. We will now take a short break for half an hour so that members may refresh themselves, and we will be back at 1:35. We will make that 1:40.
Yes, the owner for your parliament, Miss Juliet Owners. The one who owns your parliament and can block any question that she doesn't want her or her husband to answer. But thank you all very much for being here this evening. Substitute this with your Drive Time London program. We certainly will be back. Let me close this screen because it's annoying me. We certainly will be back at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 11 p.m. London time. Thank you very much for being here with us this evening, and we hope that you can join us back for tonight's program. Thank you very much. This was your Drive Time London. Join us back for the People's Point of View at 6 p.m. Thank you very much and good evening.